I'm Julie Baumgardner, and this is the Marriage on the Daily podcast, the podcast designed to give you tools and encouragement to help you do married well on the daily. Because after all, it isn't the grand gestures that make or break your marriage. It's actually what you do or don't do on the daily that either builds a strong foundation or chips away at your core. You can do this, and I'm here to help. Welcome to the Marriage on the Daily podcast. I'm your host, Julie Baumgardner. Today, you get the gift of hearing from my good friend, Dr. Morgan Cutlip. Morgan is married to Chad, her high school sweetheart, who she says is still the love of her life. They've been married for 18 years. And she's mom to Effie and Roy, who she describes as hilarious, spicy, spirited, deeply thoughtful, and emotional. All of which definitely gives her qualification to be here today to talk about marriage, parenting, and sharing the load. Morgan has worked in the field of relationship education for more than 15 years. She is the author of 2 books, Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself, 5 Steps to Banish Guilt and Beat Burnout When You Already Have Too Much to Do, and A Better Share, How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. So Morgan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to just meet with you and sit with you. So I really appreciate it.
This is really fun. I mean, y'all, I've known Morgan since she was in middle school. So it's like a reunion here, and we're going to have a good time. And I am so excited about the work that you're doing because I talk with a lot of parents who definitely feel this whole overload thing going on. And so I have been very excited to have this conversation with you about how do we share this mental load and get to this place where we're not resentful and we do have more fun together and we have great sex. How you've got to tell us, what's the super secret sauce here?
There's not a super secret.
Oh, don't
Maybe
say
we
that.
should. Should we do I know. It's not like a fun answer. I wish there was a magic wand solution, but maybe should we just define it first?
I would love that. Yes. Let's define it.
Okay. So let's define. So the mental load has many names. It's also called invisible labor.
Yes.
And so the 30,000 foot definition is it's the seemingly never-ending running to-do list we carry around in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
And it has 2 key components that are really important to understand. So the first is that the majority of tasks involved in the mental load are invisible. What this means is that it's hard to share.
Right.
It's hard to talk about. It's hard to hand off. And it's really hard to receive appreciation around. Because if it's happening in the dark, out of your awareness, then who thanks you for doing it? The second piece is that it takes up a ton of cognitive real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So this just means that it crowds out space in our brains for other important things. And so things like memory, creativity, a lot of moms will say, I have mom brain. And it's like, well, maybe that's it. Or maybe you have a ton of tabs open that are taking up a ton of space. And one of the important things it crowds out for a lot of women is their ability to get in the mood for sex. So everybody has a mental load. So one of the most common pushbacks a lot of partners will give around the mental load is they'll say, well, I have one too. So I think it's really important to say that the mental load is not specifically a women's issue. Everybody has some sort of mental load that they carry. But the issue is that when it comes to home and family life, we see time and time again in the research studies that the majority of the mental load of home and family life is carried by women. And it doesn't matter if they work full time or they're a stay-at-home mom, they're still carrying the majority of it, which means it's an easy source and a common source of resentment, frustration in a relationship. So I have an in the weeds definition, but maybe we can get there in a little bit.
Well, and I totally feel like I mean, I can so relate to that. I can remember when Jay and I were first married, and we actually, I said, I feel like I'm doing everything. I'm buying the groceries. I'm cleaning the house. I'm paying the bills. I'm doing all the things. And it was just kind of an ongoing thing for us, that mental load. And it does mess with your relationship.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really how I found myself into this sort of niche of relationship work is that, after I became a mom and after we became parents, I had pretty unique circumstances around the birth of Effie and kind of what was going on in our lives, but I could not believe how quickly I was just resentful toward
Yeah.
Chad and how
Yes.
irritated I was at him and how, if I had to sum it up in a phrase, it would be my life changed and his mostly remained the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a common experience for a lot of women. And one way that my life changed so dramatically is this mental load. I just didn't have the
Yes.
language for it at the
Yeah.
time. And, a common issue that I see when I work with couples and work with women, and we talk about this, I've collected research on the topic, is that a lot of men tend to think the mental load is the doing, is the tasks, is like,
Right.
make me a list, just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's actually not the hard part. Sometimes
Yes.
the productive doing of things feels really satisfying and really good. But my in the weeds definition talks about how there are three sort of categories of energy that we pull from in when it comes to the mental load. So I actually created a visual in my book, but it's three concentric circles. So the
Mm-hmm.
one is the physical energy. That's what men
Mm.
tend to think the mental load is. Like, just tell me what to
Yes.
do. I got this. But the second is the mental. That's like the making of the lists. What steps are involved? What do I need from the grocery store? But the third is the emotional. And this is the part that I think is actually the most draining and the
Mm-hmm.
most misunderstood. And the emotional labor is it's kind of a mouthful of a definition, but it can be helpful. It's the ongoing cause and effect calculations that we make to try to maximize positive experiences of people we love. Stakes feel high.
Wow. Yeah.
We're running them all the time. We can be
Mm-hmm.
long term or short term. It follows you everywhere. And if you don't believe that your partner or your spouse is going to do these calculations in the same way or to the same thoroughness, you're not going to feel incredibly comfortable handing some of these things off. And that's the piece I think
Yeah.
really does, create a lot of misunderstanding around this topic and for couples to feel like, especially the woman who's carrying this, I'm living in this other world that you don't fully understand. And that makes me
Mm.
feel kind of alone in this part of our life.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you're speaking to a lot of women for sure. And so what do you do with that? Because I think a lot of people would be nodding their heads big time saying, yes, that is so totally me, especially
Mhm.
that last part that you described. I carry it with me all the time, and I'm always thinking about that, but I don't know how to do things any differently.
Mhm. So I think there's lots of ways you can sort of come at this issue. And I think one of the reasons that this particular issue is so tricky to solve is because the mental load exists at the intersection of our logistical and our relational life. So
Mm-hmm.
when you look at people who are out there, like content creators or authors, a lot of times they come at it from a logistical standpoint. Oh, you just need to divvy things up differently.
Yeah.
It's all about the tasks, who owns what. And I do think this is important. I think, obviously, if you're too full, you might need to hand some things off. Your partner
Yeah.
might need to learn to take initiative. But there's
Yeah.
also this relational piece that I think is really, really important. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the first sort of steps to really getting to a better place in your relationship around this is like both speaking the same language, both being able to talk about this aspect of your life and your relationship without it spiraling into an argument or
Mm-hmm.
I call it the hardship Olympics, where one person's like, well, I do a lot too, and then you're like listing everything off and you're like, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's you want to feel like you're moving through life with a teammate, because at the
Yes.
end of the day, the amount of responsibilities is not really going anywhere. You're still going to have a lot to do. I
I
think
mean,
modern family life is honestly more than is really realistic for two people to handle on their own,
yeah.
especially when both people are working.
Hmm.
And so you want to learn how to navigate it in a way that you both feel supported, you both feel appreciated, and you feel like you can kind of like vent and talk about these things without it threatening your partner.
Yes, all of that. So, so how do you do that? I mean, what would you say are practical steps? Because I 1,000% agree with you that it doesn't tend to calm down. It does tend to ramp up. And I've absolutely been in the conversation of, well, just tell me what to do. And I mean,
Yeah.
my husband isn't lazy. It's just
No.
that I've got it all up here in my head. And it also, in addition to those three circles, it takes work to be able to say, oh, and here's how we can share. So there's
Yes.
that.
So there are a lot of ways. Okay, so I'll just give you some. So I'm actually we didn't talk about this, but I recently launched a web-based app to help couples with the mental load. And it does exist at this intersection point, which is the logistical and the relational. And so part of the free portion of the app is something called the care load assessment. So maybe we could
Mm,
link it or something for people to take.
absolutely. In the show
And
notes. Yes.
the purpose
What
of
is the
this,
app?
it's called Better Share. So it's same
Better
brand
share.
as my Better Share.
Okay.
And the purpose of the care load assessment is to make the invisible visible. So it's an abbreviated assessment that where the full one lives inside the app along with other features and things like that. But it helps to at least get couples to a place where they can look at some data, like they can
Mm,
actually look at
yeah.
some charts and some numbers and say, okay, taking care of dinner is not just the physical act of cooking, it's the actual emotional labor of thinking through what is everyone going to eat, how do I make sure they get enough nutritional value so they're not, and also so no one's like begging for a blar at bedtime.
Uh-huh.
It's the mental work of thinking about what's in the fridge and the pantry and what ingredient you're missing. It's all of these other pieces that
Mhm.
unpack in each line item on a to-do list. And so that free assessment is really designed to start that conversation. How can you start to understand that there's way more in my head than what you see at face value? And can we sit down together and talk about how can we navigate all of the things we're carrying and managing in a way that feels good to the both of us? So that's one entry point that is fun to be able to share now that I didn't previously
Yeah.
have. That kind of is a
I
shortcut
love that.
for
Yeah.
couples.
Yeah.
If you are at a place where you just need to even introduce the topic, that actually is a lot harder than it can seem at times because for some reason this topic tends to bring up a lot of defensive-ness. I think it's one of the biggest
Yes.
barriers. Um,
Yes.
a lot of times our spouses will receive the information as, I guess I'm not doing enough. I guess I'm
Mhm.
falling short, or you expect me to do more. I'm already at my limit. And so, one of the most practical tips I could give for helping this conversation start off on the right foot is positioning the mental load or all these responsibilities as the shared enemy in your relationship. And it's you two versus the shared enemy.
So
And when you
good.
position it that way, you can feel like we have to talk about how we're dealing with all of this stuff on our plate
Yeah.
versus we need to talk about how you can do more, which we might feel that, but it does not set the conversation of
Yeah.
on the right tone.
Yeah, no, I actually love that a lot because it's what we talk about all the time about the thing is what we're trying to work on, not
Mhm.
your spouse as the adversary.
Yes.
So, yeah, I
It
like
gets
that.
lost. It gets
It
lost a lot.
does. It
Yeah.
totally gets
Yeah.
lost. And I'm curious what you think. So there are some things that basically I would say, hey, these are have tos. We have to figure out food because people
Mhm.
need to eat, and we have to figure out laundry and like keeping the house some semblance of reasonably clean and so on.
Mhm.
And I was talking with someone the other day and I said, hey, don't do for your kids what they can do for themselves, which
Yeah.
a lot of people do. And I am curious. I guess I have two trains of thought here. One is just about how often I think we as moms, and I mean, I 100% did it.
Mhm.
I found myself doing things for our daughter that
Mhm.
she could totally learn to do for herself, which is actually really good for her. And then the other thing was feeling guilty about all the things she wanted to be involved in. But the question was, did we actually have the bandwidth and the financial means
Mhm.
to do those things without being 100% stressed out all the time?
Yeah, so okay, so I'm going to answer those in two different kind of categories. So,
Perfect.
the first one is really important, and I would even broaden it beyond kids. It's like also for your spouse because
Yes, for
yes,
sure.
okay. So, when I think about the mental load, I think about the way that you sort of have to tackle it is that there are individual sort of insights or awareness or issues you might need to address, as
Yes.
well as so it's like the within, and then there's also the between in your actual relationship dynamic. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you ever learn about the mental load on social media, you're sort of going to just see the dynamic. You're going to sort of see the finger pointing. It's kind of hostile territory toward men, if I'm being
Yeah, which is
honest.
not great. Yeah.
No, it's not good. I
Yeah.
like have unintentionally gotten in some debates with people, other people who talk about this, because I don't believe that's the correct approach.
Yes.
Um, but an area that is not often talked about is what usually the woman might be doing or might be bringing to the table that unintentionally sabotages handing off parts of the mental load.
1,000%. Yes.
So in my book, I talk about five behaviors that backfire. And it's not exactly what you said, but it's like kind of like all around it. So one is the micromanaging. So you try to hand something off and then you nitpick it. The other is the impatience. Can you do this? They don't do it fast enough. So you're like, I'll just do it myself. The keeping score, personalization is another. There's another one, but that what you're talking about sort of falls under that category, which
Mm-hmm.
the behavior that backfires is like it's just easier sometimes to do it yourself than to
Mm-hmm.
watch your child struggle through it, and it takes longer and they might not, do it right. And same with your partner. They might need
Yeah.
time to sort of figure it out and space to figure it out. But you've got to play the long game with mental load. With handing off these tasks, you have to play the long game. And sometimes that means giving something over to them and getting the heck out of the room so you don't need to watch how they struggle through it, but let them figure it out and let them find their own way. And I think it's really important that we have some sense of insight into ourselves or self awareness that we
Mm-hmm.
can manage our tendency to jump in and save the day and ultimately sabotage ourselves in the meantime. And so, yeah, it's important for our kids and important for our spouses too. Let them figure it
You're
out.
make you're making me think of two things. One, I can remember as a kid on Saturdays, we weren't allowed to go outside and play until we had the chores done.
Mhm.
And so one of the chores was dusting. And I did not love that. And so I would 100% not do it great. And I'd be like, okay, I'm done, and go outside and play, inevitably to get called back in to do it again. But I do give my mom credit that she left me alone to do my chore,
Yeah.
and then went back and looked, and it's like, hey, you need to come back in here and really actually dust. And then the other thing it made me think of was when our daughter was probably 7, I had done the laundry, and I had put her clothes in her room for her to fold. And I came in the room and asked her if they were folded and put away. And she said yes. And I looked in her closet, and they were
Uh-huh.
all in the dirty clothes hamper.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment that I took her out and taught her
Yes.
how to do her
Yes.
laundry, which
Yes. Okay. So you're bringing okay, so this is a little touchy subject, but there's this term called, have you heard of weaponized incompetence?
no, do tell.
Okay, I actually okay, it's a thing. It's a thing, and it's essentially where it's directed towards men, but it essentially saying like they are feigning incompetence
Mm.
To get out of doing something. So,
Mm,
and so I actually, like, I created a piece of content around it a while ago, and I created all these categories of it, which it might be like, weaponized delaying, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, and then you
yeah,
end up
yeah,
doing it, or
yeah.
weaponized, you just do it better than me. Like, I just don't quite know how you're so good at it. It's like weaponized flattery. I don't always think, it's weaponized. I think that's kind of like dangerous territory to ascribe
Yes.
intent.
Yeah.
But our kids will definitely do it, and our partners will definitely do it. And
Yeah.
I think this, in my book, I talk about something called on the job training, which I do with my kids all of the time. But sometimes
Yes.
when we're at a place in our relationship where we have taken care of something for sometimes decades,
Hmm. Right.
honestly, sometimes
Right.
decades, and we're like, now it's yours. There are lots of times where we're going to have to do a little bit of that on the job training. If we have a
Hmm.
standard that's important to us, if there are, life or death circumstances that, require this task to be done in a particular
Yeah.
way, then
Yeah.
we might have to take some time and explain how it needs to be done, and then hand it off. Now there's no excuse. Now you
Right.
know. But
Yes.
sometimes we sort of expect that our partners will just take these things on and know exactly how to do it when we've been doing it
Hmm.
for 15 years. And that's
Yeah.
not a realistic expectation.
Yeah.
And while it's common sense to us, it might not be common sense to them. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I just think about I do have conversations with people and they're like, "Well, there is only one way to load the dishwasher."
It's not
And
true.
I'm like, "Okay, well then you can't be upset when you don't get help because there really are lots of ways to load the dishwasher." And the same I would say for laundry. I mean, Jay's been doing our laundry for a very long time, and initially it totally freaked me out. And then I just was like, get a grip. And
Yes.
he does a great job, and I'm
Yeah.
appreciative.
Yeah, I think like another area that's not talked about a lot that's important is that sometimes we will moralize our way of doing things, where it's like, that's the only way you fold a towel. You're like, not really. Who cares? It doesn't,
You're reading my
these,
mail.
these things don't matter. But we have
No.
to recognize, if we're going to moralize a standard, what an idiot, he doesn't do it that way,
Mm,
then maybe we should just keep doing the task. Or we need
mm,
to renegotiate our standards with ourselves and realize there's more than one
yeah.
way to do things. Years ago, I listened to this podcast where it was a married couple talking about the mental load. And the woman shared a story where she was the one who always found the babysitter. And in this particular circumstance, she just couldn't. And so she's like, figure it out, like find a sitter for our date night. And he instead of texting like a woman, right? We would usually text one sitter, wait till we hear back, or and then they can't do it, text the next one. It takes us like 3 days to secure childcare. He did a group text to all the sitters at once, and he said the first one who gets back to me gets the job. She's like, he had a sitter secured in 5 minutes. So I think
I
like
love it.
I know it's so smart, but the like moral of that story is that sometimes our significant others, like, they might be better at something than us, and we didn't even see it coming. So we have to get out of their way sometimes and let them figure out their own style, their own methodology, and make room for that. If we're
Yes.
somebody who tends to be pretty rigid about our way of doing things.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. We need to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else do you think would be really important for us to think about when we're wanting to work on sharing the mental load and really having fun together in our
Mhm.
marriage versus feeling that resentment that I'm really doing a whole lot more than you are.
Well, that's a big question. So I'll speak. I don't know if you have many men who listen to your podcast, but I'll speak to them for a second because I collected research. It was 537 women, and then I did interviews with men and women, and I used this for my book. And it was very clear that when I asked the women, what do you want most from your partner around the mental load in your relationship? It was two things that really rose to the top. And the first was initiative taking. And I think that if men could hear anything, it would be that you need to really put some effort into learning how to meaningfully take initiative in your home and in your family and your relational life. So I'll break down what that means because I think that's vague. And anytime we ask for a need, I think we have to be very
Mm-hmm.
specific.
Mm-hmm.
But initiative taking essentially requires some sort of deep knowing and then translating that into action. So I think it's really easy, and just as our lives pick up momentum, if especially for I think men and women just have some fundamental differences. It's easy for men to kind of just like operate
Mm-hmm.
going through the motions without maybe like attuning to certain ways the home and family functions, especially if they know if their spouse has got it. They're like, check that box. I know
Yes.
I'm in good hands. I'm not
Yes.
paying much attention. And
Yeah.
so for men out there, I challenge them whenever I speak to, couples groups or date nights or whatever. I challenge the men to get to know 3 new things a day. So one new thing about, if they have kids, about their kids, one new thing about their spouse, and one new thing about how their home and family functions. If you get to know 3 things a day, that's 21 things a week. And it
Mm-hmm.
quickly accumulates to allow you to step into initiative taking, translate that into action in a way where you're going to feel competent, because that's usually the excuse. I don't know what to do. You're going to
Yes.
feel more competent and more confident when you step into this action and this initiative taking, and that's going to pay off huge in your relationship. If she
Yes.
sees you are jumping in, you're trying, you're initiating a date night, you're initiating time with one of your kids, or I read this article, made me think of her, something like that. I mean, that's just going to pay off in dividends in your
Yes.
relationship, and then it's
Yes.
what women are really looking to see.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I think, I mean, that's powerful. And the one thing I would say is that if your husband does start doing those things, uh, be aware and pay attention and notice versus saying
Mhm.
you're doing that wrong. This is how you do it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's been interesting. So, since the app recently launched within the last
Mm.
week,
Oh,
and yeah, it's very new. And leading
I
up
love
to
it.
it, we were just collecting, information and from that free assessment.
Hmm.
And when you take the assessment, it can tell if you are essentially like the man or the woman in the relationship. And so you get asked a different set of questions. And when we were looking, so we have over 5,000 people who have taken this free assessment. So we were looking through the different responses. And when I pulled out the men's responses, one of the things they wanted most in their relationship to see a little bit more of was to be appreciated for the ways that they're trying.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
there are probably not a lot of men who are actively asking for that, but I think it's an important reminder that we like to feel appreciated for all of the invisible things that we're taking care of and thoughtfulness
Mm-hmm.
we put into our
Mm-hmm.
families. But so do the men in our life too. And it's
Yeah.
important to notice those things and to express appreciation.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So good. So I ask everybody on the podcast, what's one thing that you would encourage couples to do daily that you think could significantly impact their marriage in a positive way? And I'm curious how you would answer that.
So I think one really quick thing that you could do every day is set a reminder on your phone and then a timer for 1 minute. And for 1 minute a day, you sort of just go somewhere quiet and you imagine what it is like to be your partner that day moving through their daily rhythm. So take 1 minute a day and get in your partner's shoes and imagine what's going on with them. I think that one of the ways couples can start to feel really disconnected and lonely is that they feel like they are just operating in different realities. They don't feel like they're understood. They don't feel like you know what it's like to be me in this life and in this relationship. And so the more we can practice this perspective taking, what it's like to walk in their
Mhm.
shoes, I mean, in bonus, when you translate that into, I was thinking about you today and ba, 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 ba. Yeah, or I was imagining how busy your day must have been and what that was like for you. Just these little statements really make a
Mhm.
big difference for couples to feel connected, to feel seen, understood. And in it, I think, this feeling of being in the life together is
Mhm.
really important to foster in our relationships.
Well, and I really love that because it gets you to pause for a second and where you might be all up in your head about all your stuff to actually take a second and think about what your spouse is living at the moment,
Mhm.
um, whether it's, work or dealing with the kids or whatever. It gets you in a different headspace. And I love that.
Yeah,
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And
sure.
thank you for really, this is informative and I think chock full of wisdom in terms of things that we can think about. Because as I talk with people, everybody wants to have a great marriage. And there's just these things in life that are part of the reality
Yeah.
of doing life together. And I think you really bring some practical things to the table that we can all think about, no matter what season of marriage you're in, but especially in the season of raising kids and having careers and all the things. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for listening. And if this has been relatable for you or you're thinking about friends that could really benefit from hearing this, I hope you'll share this episode. It's how we grow the podcast and it's how we help other people to grow in their marriage. So help us spread the word by sharing the podcast. And remember, it's the little things that matter on the daily in your marriage.